Okay. We okay? Everybody in their spot there? Are we ready to go, Miranda? All right. Welcome to Bountiful City Council meeting. This is Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021, and this is the regular session of our council meetings, 7 p.m. We did have a work session before this at 6:30, and sometimes it's at 6 o'clock. That's the most common time, and that's always open to the public as well. So, wow, I'm not sure we've had this many people here with the new. I love it. Did anybody? Okay, but I need to ask. Did anybody bring a ball? If you brought a ball, then maybe we need a little demonstration up here in the front. We'll see. But I remember when you all brought rackets. You did bring a ball, so we do have a demonstrator right back in the back there. Good, and I take it that the 16 isn't referring to somebody's birthday today. It's something else. All right. Well, listen, we really appreciate. And if you haven't been here, what do you think about this compared to our old chamber? Do you like it? Huh? Yeah. Good. I'm glad. I'm really happy about it. You know, light means a lot to me, and when we get all this light here and that, I just think it brings a kind of a fellowship together when it's like this. So we're so glad that all of you are here, and we have every one of our council here except for Richard Higginson, he's away on a learning experience with the power board, and so we're going to excuse him, and in his place we've voted Caroline here to take his place on the council. So we're really happy to have her. Yes, go ahead. We'll lean back. We'll let you get that. Okay. So we'll do a roll call for our council, and we appreciate all of you being here. And we'll start again with you, Kate.
Kate Bradshaw.
Chris Simonson.
Kendallyn Harris.
Randy Lewis.
Millie Segura Bar.
And Caroline. Thank you. Well, listen, we will start tonight, as we always do, with a Pledge of Allegiance. And I've asked Steve Freebairn if he would lead us in that Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Steve. So with us to offer a prayer is Corey Frogley, and he lives up in the Mueller Park Stake. And if you'd come to the podium, Corey, we'd appreciate you. Thank you.
Our gracious Father in heaven, we are so grateful to be gathered together as fellow citizens and saints. We call upon Thee and invite Thy Spirit to be with us in this City Council meeting. We express our true gratitude for Thy servants who sit on this board to lead and guide our great city. We are mindful of the challenges and the tribulation that is before us. We pray for rain to end this drought. We pray for peace and safety within the city. We're so grateful to be a part of it and a part of this state and a part of this great country. We express our love and gratitude for Thee. We love our neighbors and pray for mediation to be leading and guiding our great council. And this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Frogley. We appreciate you being here for that beautiful prayer. So let's start with council reports. So we'll start, Kate, please.
Nothing this evening. I'm just looking forward to hearing from all of our great residents.
It's amazing. So good. Chris.
It's neat to see a lot of neighbors and patients that have grown up. It's quite a sight. I appreciate this. Last Saturday, we had the opportunity of hosting Operation Zero, which is a group of motorcyclists who have suffered from experiences in Vietnam and in the armies. And these men and women came to our Veterans Park for a kickoff. There were between 150 to 200 of them, and they went to all the different parks around the state of Utah, and they were very emotional when they came here, and they thanked Mayor, they thanked this city for such a beautiful park that was built in honor of our men and women who have served this country. It was quite an experience to see last Saturday. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Chris. I think all of us on the council, and I think anyone that knows how this all came about, how Chris and his team of people made this happen, and it's what a sacred thing it is for Bountiful to have this next door to City Hall. Kendall, please.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to thank the pickleball group. You guys have always been so positive in your interactions. I feel like, a lot of times it's easy when there's something you want. We start to hear complaints or negativity, but with you, it's been all positivity. And it's really great that you're promoting something health and families can do together. And so it's really exciting that we have this possibility before us. So thank you. Also, I just want to make a quick plug for anybody who's a business owner or if you know business owners, there's a business symposium for all Bountiful-owned businesses on September 22nd. It'll be at 7:30 that morning. It'll just be a few hours long, but it'll be a good opportunity to get to know other business owners in Bountiful and to kind of hear from the city and for the city to hear from you. So for business owners, the Bountiful Business Symposium, September 22nd. Thanks.
Good. I expect we'll probably hear that date every time we have a city council meeting. I hope so. Millie, please.
I would only like to add that I have been equally impressed not only with the pickleball group, but also the skate group. You guys you're a great group. Thank you. But for those of you who may not know, they have been incredibly respectful and kind, and they have been good to work with as well. So looking forward to seeing how we can make things work together for the better of the community. So thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you, Millie. It reminds me of Sunday. I had a young 12-year-old just came up to me and just jerked on my suit coat and said, Mr. Mayor, are you going to build a skate park for us? We need one so badly. And I'm thinking they really have been so respectful when they've come, and I think there's a real anxiousness for us to provide some activities, active transportation, so to speak, for bicyclists and for skateboard folks and the like. So, and pickleball's a big deal. So we're really glad. There's a lot of smiles here. We really appreciate it. So this is our time for public comment, and we do this for 10 minutes, and each person has, yes, you can come already, 2 minutes to express yourself, and please give your name and where you live.
Claudia Lindeberg, 2057 Penman Lane. I was here 2 weeks ago when there were 4 of us here. I believe that there should be transparency in our government. And when I was here and asked how much more we paid for the cemetery property, Mr. Higginson said $300,000 more. Well, under investigation, East offered it to the city for $3.5 million. The city paid $1.5 million more than they needed to. That would have built a lot of pickleball courts.
Thank you. Next, please, Kevin.
My name is Kevin Olson. I live at 1182 East, 1850 South in Bountiful. I'm a 30-year resident here in Bountiful, and I love it here. I have to apologize. I have Parkinson's, and so my hand shakes and my body shakes, and sometimes my thoughts leave me. So I've written down what I wanted to say. It reminds me about 20 years ago, I was conducting a sacrament meeting, and I looked out in the audience and I congratulated a family for having a death in their family. It was not a wise thing to do, but I didn't have any excuses then. Now I have Parkinson's. I had to have a good excuse now while I'm doing stuff. Mayor Lewis and City Council, we know you're not voting on pickleball at this time, but we wanted to show you the new design, and you and the new design company that are still in need and great interest for new pickleball courts at our park. We appreciate what you're doing for us. We thank you for allowing us to attend this meeting and for listening to those who love our city and support our sport of pickleball. The reason members of our pickleball committee has been willing to pass out thousands of flyers for the Washington Park bond, put up yard signs, and talk to our neighbors, we knew it was our best chance to get 16 or more pickleball courts in our city. 7 years ago, Mayor Lewis and the city was ahead of the curve when they opened the first courts in Davis County. Since then, they have been packed, and we have trained many new players to the sport. Because before these were opened, there were only 8 pickleball courts in all of northern Utah. I'm told there are now over 600 courts in northern Utah. What a change, and you guys were the start of that with opening up Cheese Park. Pickleball is not a fad. Even the LDS Church has 1 or 2 courts inside many of their cultural halls. Pickleball has been reported to be the fastest growing sport in America. It is not just an old person sport like it was 7 years ago. It is being taught in many high schools, and this summer is being played in the Junior Olympics. We only need 1 acre of ground for the 16 courts, or 1.5 acres if we want to do 24 courts. Preferably, we like to keep it where the large trees are in the southwest part of the park. We want to save those old, beautiful trees if we can and work around those trees, but that'd be a great place for pickleball. Right now, most of our players are playing at the 6 Woodcross courts, or the 16 Farmington courts, or the 11 Kaysville courts, but they are packed every day, and so are the 16 courts in Clearfield, the 16 in Spanish Fork, the 16 in Riverton, the 25 in Brigham City. Do we think we need 16 courts? Maybe 24. We love our city, and we're proud of what you guys have done for us. You guys are top-notch people. We have a great mayor who I love, and I call a friend, and I've enjoyed working with Kate Bradshaw also. She's a great lady, and I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kevin. We appreciate it. An appropriate spokesman. You did very well, Kevin. Please.
Hi, council members. My name is Sterling Ripp. My address is 977 Oakwood Drive. I'm here along with many fellow skateboarders and friends in support of the creation of the Washington Elementary Park. I first want to say that skateboarding is a sport just like basketball, soccer, lacrosse, and pickleball. It's also now an Olympic sport. We are here tonight to make Bountiful residents aware of the growing need for a skate park in our city, and that the Washington Elementary property would support that need perfectly. I would like to point out that the temporary skate park built at Rocket Park has been a success over the last few seasons, and we see that the spot gets lots of use, the skateboarders have been respectful. I believe this trial proves that the need for a full-size permanent skate park. To my knowledge, skateboarders here in Bountiful have been advocating for an official park since '94. Since then, skaters have taken matters into their own hands and built spots. However, these temporary projects came with consequences involving unhappy residents and a dissatisfied skate community. Now is the perfect time and opportunity with a beautiful property that serves as a blank slate to create a permanent space for all residents of Bountiful to relax, recreate, and enjoy, including our skate community. I've researched and have data provided by Spawn Ranch Skate Parks and the Tony Hawk Foundation that highlight a multitude of positive impacts that come with building a skate park. I urge each council member to consider the positive impact a permanent area for kids, teens, and adults can share their passion for skateboarding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. How many here came because of the skateboard thing? Oh my gosh. You know what? That's really, really impressive. Your groups coming and doing it so positively really really affects all of us up here on the dais and how we feel about things. So we're really excited about you coming in the way that you've arrived here. Thank you very much. Somebody else. So there's still some time.
My name's Dustin Atwood. I grew up 2 streets from Mr. Simonson in the same ward. I've been skating my whole life, and I'm 40 years old now. I have my own house of my own. I have kids that skate. I've skated everywhere you can possibly skate in all of Bountiful, North Salt Lake, anywhere, whether it's businesses that don't want us there, parks they don't want us there. I'm so excited to finally see somewhere like this come to fruition that I can have somewhere for my kids to go, not have to send them out to Salt Lake or to Layton, somewhere to actually have somewhere it's legal for them to actually skate. So if there's anything we can do to, just to push this harder, we'll do it.
You're doing good.
I've been here since '94 when Randy from the boarding house first started this, and we had one so close by the rec center, and kind of got shot down, and so. Yeah, we've been trying for a long time, so I think it's time to give us somewhere to skate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Mike.
Hello, how are you doing? I would like to talk about money and economics. As you can see, we have a banner in the back with the AAU. Basically, a lot of people don't know about that, but the AAU was the U.S. Olympic Committee from about 1896 until the 1970s, and we got them involved in pickleball. My wife and I flew to Orlando and met with the president of AAU, who is on the Olympic Committee, and he's all in to help us. Regarding economics, is that I'd like to do a small AAU tournament here. The one we did in Orlando, which I cannot do here, was 2,800 teams, 120,000 players, volleyball, basketball, everything. And according to Disney, it brought in $91 million into the local economy. According to the Utah Department of Tourism, pickleball players, since they're older, a lot of them, bring in more money in tourist dollars when they come in for a tournament. So that's why I'm plugging, 16 courts to 24 courts, fill up the restaurants, fill up the shops. It's nice to do these improvements on Center Street, but we need people spending money on the main street of Bountiful. Since we worked with you and you were so kind to get Cheese Park done 7 years ago, we originally had 8 courts. We now have, as Kevin mentioned, over 600 courts. We started with 60 players. Now we have over 4,000 players. Spanish Fork did 16 courts. Clearfield just did 16 courts. They're bringing in tourist dollars into these communities, and I'd like to see Bountiful grow. I forgot to give you my address. I live at 1064 Woodmore, across the street from Chris. When I moved in to take care of my mother-in-law with my wife, I weighed 310 pounds. And I had severe diabetes, and I was on my deathbed. I literally gave my clothes away and gave my furniture away. And pickleball saved my life. I've lost 70 pounds. I'm still fat. I'm still bald. I'm still ugly, but I've lost a lot of weight. And it's all because of pickleball. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Hello, council members.
Hello.
Hello, Bountiful. Love to see it. I don't live in Bountiful, but I work in Bountiful, and I stay at my shop for longer than I stay at home, so I basically live in Bountiful. So I run the skate shop in Bountiful, and it's on 2600 South. If any of you haven't been there, come say hi. I'll get you some stickers, give you a high five, whatever you want, whatever you need. And it's been amazing to meet all of these skateboarders and people in Bountiful. There's so many great people here, and it's honestly kind of sad, a little sad that we have so many great skateboarders here that don't have a place to kind of call home. And we're so happy that we have Rocket Park. Seriously, thank you, Kate. You seriously helped a ton, and all of you. You all helped a ton, and thank you for that. But I think it's time for more. I remember the first time I showed up to Rocket Park, I was like, there's like 20 people here. And it's a pretty small basketball court. Like, if you've ever been there, like, it's pretty small, and 20 skaters adds up really quick, and you all have to take turns. But we've figured it out, and we're all having fun there, but everyone's asking for more. I see and know personally all the skateboarders that live here in Bountiful and surrounding areas, and I know that it will impact so many lives very positively. I've done a lot of research. I did a whole college paper that I interviewed Kate about that she probably remembers, and I've really looked into it and tried to be unbiased, try to not look at it from a skateboarder's perspective, but I looked into it, and it really is positive. And I mean, like, I just got done with a wrist injury, but that's just kind of a part of it. Like, we'll get hurt, but we'll be fine. And I mean, I'm a 22-year-old skateboarder. I don't know how to sue anyone. So even if I could, I definitely would not. So yeah, we definitely aren't the suing type of people, and we don't know how to. So don't worry about it. Sorry, I just had to give a little joke.
Oh,
But,
thank you.
yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you. My children all loved skateboarding, and I was somewhat athletic when I was young, so I decided I could do it, and I fell on my head really hard. The skateboard went clear across the street, and I landed on my head. So that was a...
Who was the person, we had one where someone said that they bombed the hill at Utah State.
Yeah. Oh.
Yes, Chris.
Oh, good. That was Chris. So anyway, we've had our experiences, but it really is. It's really nice to have this group here today. Thank you all. The comment period now is over, and we're going to turn some time over to our Bountiful City Youth Council report, and the person who's over that is Millie Barr.
Would you like to excuse some of us?
What did you do, Kevin? No, absolutely. Yep. Let's see. Were we going to? No, we don't want you to leave. We don't want you to leave. We're going to keep you here to the very end. Gary asked if I'd move it and put you to the very, very end. No, just be patient for just a little bit. Will you? Okay. Millie.
We don't have a youth council report tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Consider approval of expenditures greater than $1,000 paid May 11th and June 7th, 2021.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Good. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'm not sure I saw minutes on here.
They're not on there.
Okay.
We weren't able to get them together in time, so
Okay,
they'll
so
be on the next
we'll do
agenda.
minutes next time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question and a
Sure, please.
suggestion.
Sure.
Given that so many of our residents are here today for
We are
a
doing
certain
this.
topic, could we
we
maybe
are
take a
doing it.
motion out of order on
Yeah,
that particular item?
we've planned that. Thank you, Kate. With that, we're going to turn some time over to Lloyd Cheney, who is our city engineer, and he will cover item number 9, but we're going to put it in place of item number 5. Lloyd, so thanks for staying.
Thanks, Mayor. Tonight I have for the council's consideration the award of the contract for architectural services at 1 Washington Park. This is really the first substantial step in the development of the park, and that's to select a qualified firm to help guide us in what is eventually going to be built on the site. We received 5 proposals from architects, various combinations of architects and landscape architects, and the committee that reviewed those chose to interview 2 firms. Both of those firms have a lot of experience in these types of projects. Design West had a portfolio that was inches thick of pickleball courts and tennis courts and some really great facilities. MGB&A also, similar experience. We were very comfortable with the skill set of both of those firms and the consultants that they had partnered with. After interviewing both of those firms, though, the committee felt like MGB&A was probably the better choice for a couple of reasons. Now, one, price is always important, but that certainly wasn't the deciding factor. You may remember back to Creekside Park and some of the challenges we had there. MGB&A was the designer for that facility. I think we would all agree that it turned out great. It's really an awesome and well-loved and well-used facility for the city. Contractually, we had some complications completing that project with our contractor. And MGB&A stood there beside us and worked through the completion of the construction. Along with them on their team is JRCA, and they were the architect for this building. And we kind of trudged through some tough times with them on this project too. So knowing that we have a highly qualified firm, one that's a very good value for the services they're going to provide, and someone who has proven to be supportive of the city and the city's interest, really weighed heavily in our decision. Now, in the RFP, we outlined some requirements for the activities that they would need to provide. And those were a minimum of 3 public outreach activities. So you people will have a chance to come and sit down, hear some presentations, give your ideas. There'll be an opportunity to provide some input on what facilities you would like to see, probably some input on where you think they ought to go, what the best arrangement is. But we anticipate a very robust activity with the public. Now, not only with the groups that are interested in facilities, but we're particularly sensitive for the neighbors down there. Those people have gone from a nice, quiet neighborhood over the last couple of years, and this is going to have an impact on them. To their credit, I think MGB&A recognized this, partially because of the experience at Creekside Park. And to me, it was very important. It spoke highly that they identified that one of the very first tasks they wanted to do was go down and meet with those residents individually before we ever started any of the other public process, but just to introduce themselves, get to know the residents, find out their concerns, and to be able to get that stuff, that information right from the get-go and let it help to influence the design.
Lloyd, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Just that I think would be helpful for our residents that are here. Whether your motto is skate or die or stay out of the sink, out of the kitchen. What type of a timeline for this public engagement do you envision? Because I know both groups are really interested in making sure that they're aware of that timeline so they don't miss an opportunity. Because as much as I know they love coming on the second and fourth Tuesdays, we wouldn't want them to feel they'd miss that opportunity to be part of that process.
So immediately after the council's approval, we'll get going on the contractual side of things. But our schedule begins the public process next month. So we want to get going on this. We need to move through the public process so we can get to design. The goal is to begin design in the upcoming spring. As soon as conditions permit, we want to be able to hit the ground running with a contractor and bring this thing online next year. So July and August into September, I would expect public process, public input.
Thank you. And where do you envision the architectural firm might post such things if the public wants to be sure they don't miss out on where they would find them?
Well, they'll be on the website for sure.
Okay. Thanks.
I might add, I'm sure we will advertise them through our social media too. So if you're not already checking into our Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, everything else, please do so.
Thank you.
I would just add one other thing to the comments I've made. Besides the recommendation to award the contract to MGB&A, staff also requests that the council authorize us to begin to select that contractor now. I think that we realized the benefit of the construction manager, general contractor model with the construction of the town square. And I think that'll be very important on this, particularly where the construction market is very volatile right now. We need someone who has their hand firmly on the wheel and understands what the costs are, what the availability of materials are in order to bring this project online in the timeline we want.
Thank you. Anything else, Lloyd?
No, that's all.
Okay, thank you. From the council, any questions?
I'm just thrilled because I thought they did such a good job with the public process last time in getting feedback from the public, and so it's so perfect that they also just happen to be the lowest bidder. I'm excited.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, then I will look for a motion.
Mayor,
Oh,
I'd
sorry,
like to make
Kate.
a motion. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Kate.
No, actually, I was going to make a motion, but you go ahead, because I will be ready with a second.
Okay. Thank you. Chris?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the awarding of the contract for the architectural design services for Washington Park to MGB plus A, in the amount of $106,650 to begin this construction project at Washington Park.
I would second with the addition, if it's friendly, that the staff also begin the selection of a construction manager / general contractor.
Perfect. You're good with that, Chris?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Mayor. Thank you.
So any other further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, if they dare? All right, that motion passes. Hey, congratulations to all of you, because I think this is going to be wonderful. I don't know if you know it, but if you've been down to Bountiful Town Square, that has been awarded 2 or 3 Best of State awards for that park. And you know what? The same thing is going to happen at Washington Park. It is. Thank you for coming. We'll excuse anyone here that needs to go. Hey. Hey, no, hey, you know what I love? I love, and I hear this from skateboarders all the time now, that skateboarders, they police their own areas. They do not let people come in and mess it up for them. And I heard somebody say the other day there was a big gathering somewhere. It might have been in Murray, but when it was over, whoever people like you said, we clean up everything now. It's sort of like a scout camp, and they went through and cleaned everything. There wasn't a piece of a piece of paper on the ground. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Huh? Yes.
The skate park there is amazing. It's Caney, right?
Yes.
Yes, that skate park is amazing.
It's coming, and you know we've got this road now that's going to be built, and so we've really made some good progress. Okay, help me. Will you send me an email? Okay, give me your card. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for being patient with us too. We appreciate people that are patient with us a little bit. Thank you. All right. We need to continue on now. Thank you all. Oh my gosh. It's like church is out. Okay. We're going to go next item number 6. We'll turn the time over to Galen. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? I've had some comments that if we show things on the sides.
Yeah.
That the public viewing online can't see, so if we can make an effort if we can to.
So the short answer is we have the capability, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and we don't know why it doesn't work sometimes. This is why sometimes we have things show up online that we put on the screens and sometimes we don't. Yeah, we're still trying to work that out, but in theory, we have the capability. We just don't know what's wrong.
So something, part of the punch list. Yeah, we'll get it. We need to get that fixed. Thanks, Kate, for seeing that.
And Mayor, you said item number 6?
Item number,
That would be me if we're doing 6 on the amended agenda.
Yeah, on the amended agenda, that's the
on the amended,
fireworks
that's right.
ordinance.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, sorry,
Please, no, you're right.
We've got 2 different
Yeah, we're good.
agendas that we're working from. Just for the public's benefit, we amended an agenda and it kind of changed our order, so we're working from 2 different.
No, that's great. Thanks, Clint.
Yeah, no problem. So this is item number 6, consider approval of ordinance 2021-0, actually -07, prohibiting the use of fireworks east of Orchard Drive, and I'll be presenting that. As the council is aware, you're very familiar with this process. The Utah Code and the International Fire Code authorizes municipalities to be able to make restrictions based on what the International Fire Code calls hazardous environmental conditions. There's a number of things that can qualify as hazardous environmental conditions, but basically what we're looking for in Bountiful is anything that raises the risk of fires. As you all are aware, we're in a current state of extreme drought. The governor has made a declaration as such and declared a state of emergency. As we've reviewed this as a staff and reviewed it with our fire chief from the Metro Fire District, he has indicated concern, and we share that concern, that fireworks are going to be a real risk this year. That being said, we have before you ordinance number 2021-07 that would further restrict, in addition to what you did earlier this year in May, it would restrict the fireworks due to Due to hazardous environmental conditions, the discharge of fireworks is prohibited at all times in the following areas of Bountiful City until January 1, 2022. East of 400 East from Pages Lane to 500 South, and then east of Orchard Drive, east of Orchard Drive from 500 South to the North Salt Lake border, and then anywhere else that would be deemed appropriate by the South Davis Metro Fire Agency. It's pretty obvious what the purpose of that is. We're concerned about our canyons, we're concerned about our open space, we're concerned about our hills and our mountains. Bountiful City is unique in that we have a lot of mountainous and forest terrain, and it's particularly vulnerable this year. We don't have to go back very far to remember some fires that have happened on our hillsides and how we've been very blessed to avoided further disaster. So that's the only change that I made. The only other thing that we've added is just paragraph 11, which is also which is just mimicking what's in the state code, and that is a violation of this section is a Class B misdemeanor. So if this is approved, I do want to just have one quick further discussion and get some direction from the council on enforcement, but I would ask for a vote first.
Okay, any questions for Clint? If not, I would look for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks, Kate. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes. So back to you, Clint.
So first thing what we're looking direction on is that we know that there are a lot of citizens that love fireworks. We do too, and they would not be able to do that with these restrictions that you've just put in place, at least not at their homes. So we're looking at public spaces that can be utilized for the ignition and discharge of fireworks. We met today as a management team and discussed the options. We feel that the most appropriate place to be would be just out here in this parking lot here in front of the police department with we've got several different parking areas. It would be the furthest west parking strip in this park that we could make available for fireworks. We would arrange for disposal with trash cans or trash receptacles or bins, what's the word I'm looking for, dumpsters, that they could be, that everything could be disposed of. But we know that there's going to be a desire to use fireworks, and we think that that would be an appropriate place to do it, but we're looking for direction from you.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
City parks, I'm guessing that we have an ordinance in our city parks that would prohibit the discharge of fireworks in a city park, private fireworks, not commercial displays, is that correct?
Yes.
So if we did allow a spot for residents to come so that they could discharge their own fireworks, would it be like the same timeframes as what we,
It would have to be the
when
same
they were
timeframes.
allowed?
Those are set by the state. Those are not set by us. It would be, so for July, it would be July 2nd through the 5th, I believe is the dates. And then what are this, we've got our fire chief here. He can give you more details on that.
Thanks for letting me come up. The discharge dates, Councilman Harris, is that they are from July 2nd to July 5th and ending at 11 p.m. at night except for the 4th where it goes till the midnight. So, but I stand behind this decision.
and what's your feeling about this option of having, a place designated for Bountiful residents to?
I agree. I definitely think we need to have a place for them. If we restrict it, there needs to be somewhere where they can light them. And obviously, the safest place we can find is an open area that is mostly asphalt or concrete, that we have those areas. So I think it's a great idea, and I support that. So.
Chief, could I ask you a question? The height of rockets going up, I mean, we're going to set a limit on height above, is it?
So, Councilman Simonson, that's regulated by the state with the aerials, which are cake aerials. So they can only go to a certain height. We can't regulate that. That's the state and what this are sold at the fireworks. The only aerial device that is not allowed is a mortar style, which is similar what we use in the commercial shoots that we do at the cities. So those aren't, and I believe, I want to tell you, and I apologize, I don't have the exact number, but I think it's about 100 feet up in the air that the cakes will go. So the cake style aerial devices will go. So the mortars will go further, and those are outlawed by the state.
So will we have fire department there, just in case, where we have water to drop these sparklers and things in rather than just on the ground?
So I am not planning on staffing the area with firefighters. We expressed to, I expressed to Gary and everything that July 3rd for us is, we have 3 cities that shoot fireworks off on July 3rd. Everybody but Woods Cross and Bountiful. So I have not only staffing at those, but I have to staff our stations as well and run calls. So to staff a vehicle here, we do have a station that's close. I would hope that we are not responding over here to put out a dumpster fire, but that could be a possibility. And the problem with, we discussed, I mean, obviously, the best way to get rid of fireworks or after you use them is to soak them in water overnight before you put them in your trash can. Just so that they're out. What happens is you normally put them in your trash can, there's combustibles in your trash can, they heat up and start on fire. If we lose a garbage can, we lose a garbage can. It's when that garbage can is located to a house or a vehicle or some other structure that we can concern ourselves with that. I believe that the staff here at Bountiful have decided that we can avoid that, and I think that will be the best way to go. So,
thanks, Chief.
Yeah, we had some.
Mayor,
Please. I was just going on that comment. I was just going to say we had some discussion about putting some water in the cans or in the dumpster, or having a separate water area that fireworks can be dipped in and then thrown and then discarded. We've got some ways that we can do that, and then of course we'll leave the dumpsters in the middle of the area so that it's the farthest away from buildings.
I love this idea, and I'm glad that we're going to create a location where people can come. My only suggestion or question is if we can have more than one location. I could see this getting really crowded. Is that a possibility? Are school parking lots available? Is that a conversation that we've had
Well,
with the
the
district?
question about that, Millie, is that if everybody wanted to do that, there certainly wouldn't be room here for the number of people, depending on how many wanted to come, right?
Yes,
So-
and so I'm just wondering if we have other locations.
One of the difficulties with the school is, of course, those aren't our properties, so we would need to get permission. And then they're typically surrounded by residences. This is further away and more insulated from residences. Yes, there are homes and condos and things like that nearby, but it's more isolated than some of our elementary schools, where that might be pretty disruptive to a neighborhood if you have a lot of people sending fireworks into the air right in their backyards.
And we
So
do have some
we thought about that.
schools that have firework retails in them. Centerville does, Bolton usually has one, and you can't discharge fireworks within it. So if we told them that they could go to schools, if we got that permission, we could run in that problem too, that people would go and light fireworks off by where they're trying to sell them, and we can't have them.
Yeah.
So that is a problem.
Hey, Chief, while you're there, just a question of, make sure we clarify this, that this change down to Orchard or 400 East in Bountiful, you're fully supportive of.
I am, Mayor, yes.
Of this ordinance, okay? I think it's really important for us to, for the public to know that, the fire chief is comfortable with where we are.
I'm very comfortable with it. It actually makes me more comfortable, obviously, with this situation that we're in right now. When we've initiated that restriction in May, when we were supposed to, I don't think we knew we were going to be in this situation as soon as we are in June. We're going to be at 100 again tomorrow. Our mountains are definitely past where we should be already, and it's an extreme situation.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments for the chief or for Clint? We feel like we're doing the right thing?
I share Councilwoman Segarra-Barr's just question about whether we can find a second location. I am just worried that it's a lot of people who traditionally have fallen in that area between Orchard and Davis, and to concentrate them here might create interesting logistical challenges. And so to the extent that we can look for an additional property or park that has, good access, open space without trees, and that would be my preference.
So
If we
there's-
can't find one, I'll understand, but I think I would prefer a second.
There's only one location in addition to here that really fits that criteria, which is Washington Park. The concern there is that it is largely surrounded by neighbors on one side. But there isn't really, because we did discuss that this morning too, trying to see if there was another location. And I think it could be done at Washington Elementary. There isn't nearly the hardscape. It would be done on the grass.
Could we close down Main Street for a few blocks?
No, wouldn't be a good idea. Wouldn't be,
after
for one
stores
thing, it
close?
would be, we'd have to close it down for 3 nights in a row, and we'd have to, during the 5th, and 3 nights in a row during the 25th. It's already difficult to get through that area. Normally, when it's closed down for our events, we just wouldn't. I know the merchants would be unhappy with that. They'd be unhappy with the mess. And so, what's that? Oh, and it is a bus route too. So we would strongly recommend not closing any streets to do this. Now, we've done this before. We did this about 8 years ago.
2000, I believe it was 2011 or
So maybe 10 years
2010.
ago.
Yeah,
You
somewhere.
had an alternative spot for people to come?
We did the same thing. We put the boundary at Orchard and 4th East, and we allowed people to come here, and it worked fine. It wasn't overrun.
Do you have any idea how many people came, or?
I don't recall. It wasn't anything that was overwhelming.
I remember we put it down at Orchard. I don't remember having, an issue here where we were responding, but I do remember that's when it was down to Orchard, so.
And was it similar reasons, like dry conditions and?
So Gary, maybe one question, just, do we share parking space on the west side of Bountiful Junior? Do we share that parking space
We own
with them?
we own that west side, but there is a fireworks stand there on the school property. So it's-
There is one right there, okay. Otherwise, I would have thought maybe that might have been a possibility, but I didn't, I haven't been down there to see that, that one there.
I recognize it's not property that we control, but the rec district parking lot? Would that be a possibility that the rec district might entertain? Maybe somebody who's on their board could ask.
I could just see hours of operation being the problem there.
Yeah.
Because they're open well after dark.
Yeah, I
and-
think the problem is that it's not just the one night deal, I think, Kate, is that then it's going to interrupt a lot of their programs and things that they have, so
My-
I think
my-
that'd be, honestly, that would probably be the best spot in all of Bountiful, because it's
My
so big.
suggestion would be this, is that we limit it to the one location, and if it turns out that that's a problem, then we can look for a second one for the next 3 nights of pandemonium around the 24th. I suspect we're going to be okay. I think it's also, and this would be good to get the council's direction on, but I think we are also hoping to get a direction from the council to encourage people simply not to light off fireworks this year. Go to the city show. If you absolutely have to exercise your right to blow things up, go to a place where it's legal. But if there was ever a year not to do it, I think the message from the city ought to be, please forbear this year. It's our intention to work through the emergency districts. I was on a phone call with the governor's staff and the League of Cities and Towns last week where this was a major concern. And statewide, everybody's very worried about it. And we recognize people are going to want to light off their fireworks. There's probably no way to stop it. But we are hoping that people this year will use some common sense. And so with the council's permission, I think we would like to strongly encourage people just simply not to light off fireworks this year.
I think that's.
But if they have to, come down here.
I concur. We have 3 good shows on the 3rd. Obviously, North Salt Lake probably puts on the biggest show on the 3rd, and then West Bountiful and Centerville are all. So you have 3 opportunities to watch professional fireworks. I agree with Gary. I mean, people want to light off their own fireworks, and I think that with restricting this, that was one of our concerns was, well, if you restrict me, I need somewhere to go and light fireworks, and I think this gives them that avenue to do that. But the 23rd is another day, and Bountiful puts on a great show for the 23rd. So I would, as the fire chief, obviously, my anxiety goes up every year around the 4th, and it's not because of the celebration, it's because of all the celebrations. And so I would hope that people do that and just go use and watch the professional shows that are put on, so.
Thanks, Chief. Any other questions or comments?
No, just given the chief's recommendation, I'm more comfortable with just having one spot if we focus our messaging on these are the reasons why you might want to rethink your party plans.
Thank you. Comfortable with that direction, Kendallin? Chris?
Absolutely.
Kate?
Yes, and I think I'd even go a step further and agree that we should probably authorize our staff to use our social media to think of the top 10 ways to celebrate Independence Day and Pioneer Day that don't involve open flames.
Squirt guns.
Maybe a contest.
All right. So you have the direction that you
Now,
need?
we've got one other item that we want to discuss too.
okay.
On the same topic, as noted in the Utah Code, it's a Class B misdemeanor as well as in here. We need direction on enforcement. Gary and I and the 2 chiefs met today to discuss enforcement and to talk about the various levels of enforcement that we can enforce these restrictions, and we need direction from you on how you would like us to enforce it, whether it be strict enforcement of all of that yellow area, whether we should concentrate on areas near the highest risk areas like the open fields and the canyon areas and the open spaces. I will tell you that our Assistant Chief Edwards reported today that issuing citations for fireworks is not their favorite thing to do, but they will do it if they are instructed to. So we need to get some direction from you on that.
One last couple of comments. What we find, though, too, is people say, okay, thanks, and then when they leave, they continue with the fireworks. And so I think we just need some clear direction on what your expectations are as far as issuing citations.
Maybe just a comment in council before you have comments of your own, is that this has been a tough year. I just don't know that it would be best for us to be giving consternation to our citizens so much. I mean, we obviously can, but my recommendation that unless we have belligerent members of our community, I would suggest that the police ask them gently, or the firemen ask them gently to just not do it. I just don't know that it would be good for us to give them citations.
I think my feelings would be that to ask our chief of police and our fire chief, to the extent that you're able, that you're not otherwise engaged in certifying displays and putting out fires, that we concentrate on our hillsides and our ravine areas. It seems to me like that would be primarily where we could do the most good, and so we ought to focus there and then circle other streets as time allows during those the firework time periods to ensure that we keep areas safe. You know, I live on the the north end of town, and I haven't forgotten what it was like to be awakened to pounding on the door when it looked like the fire was coming down from the B into the city. So I would probably feel a little more comfortable with a slightly stronger enforcement. I don't think that everyone that might be doing a personal firework display that is inside the restricted area absolutely needs a ticket, but I do think that we're going to have to repeat this a second time in July, and so setting a tone that we are serious about this in the first holiday will probably pay dividends in the second holiday, when we will just be hotter and drier and with slightly less water to use. So that would be my feelings.
We will be wetter, though, by then. All right. Any other?
I don't think we should be firework Nazis, but I do think we should, if we're going to pass something, I think we should be willing to enforce it. And so in the degree that patrols allow, and I'm sure it's a busy time for firefighters and our police officers, but for our residents to know that we meant it, what we said, that there's an actual danger, and that we want them to abide by it. So I don't think it's wrong. I mean, to at least have a good presence and to help our residents know that the police and the firefighters are out and around and watching.
Thank you.
I would agree with Councilwoman Bradshaw and Harris. I think we need to, if we're going to pass this, we need to be willing to enforce it to the best of our capabilities. And I have full confidence in you, Chief, and in the firemen who are, you know, with our county, that you guys will make the judgments that are needed. And I know it's not a dreamy thing to do, but I just think if we're going to pass this, we need to be willing to enforce it for the safety of all residents, as opposed to being worried that we might hurt someone's feelings. I think we need to look at the greater good and what potential consequences may be if these restrictions aren't enforced. So, but obviously, I mean, you have a good demeanor, and I know that everyone does that works with you, and I know that you'll be sensitive to certain situations. So that would be my my thoughts.
Okay. Chris?
Well, I agree. If we're going to have a rule, we need to enforce it.
Okay.
I think it's important that we can do it gently, but I think if there is a real violation, I live on a canyon and I can just see something happening on that canyon. And it really concerns me. So I think that we need to be diligent. The committee needs to let our citizens know, and I think they need to know that we will enforce it, because this is right now a crisis, and we need to step up. Thank you.
And I guess the question is, as far as the direct consequence, is it a warning or, I mean, a misdemeanor? That's
Yeah, so there's,
severe.
yeah, there's a number of ways that you can approach that too. I've heard a lot about discretion, and a lot of that's going to fall to the level of the fire and police personnel. But there's also a lot of discretion that goes on at the prosecutor's office, and we can charge it in different ways. The Class B misdemeanor mimics what's in the state code. It also provides a very good tool for really egregious violations that are putting property and even life in danger at times. But it doesn't have to be charged that way. It can be charged as a Class C misdemeanor or even as an infraction, which is basically a fine, operates more like a parking ticket type of a thing. So there's that discretion as well. What I'm hearing from the council here is that you passed an ordinance, and you think it needs to be enforced, but with discretion. So the direction that we're getting and that we'll give our personnel is to use discretion, to take the opportunities to educate and also continue to build relationships with our citizens and our community, but to also not be afraid to issue citations and enforce where necessary. As
They
we
can still do warnings, though, I would think.
Police officers can give warnings or they will
Right.
cite.
Right.
At this point, what I think they probably would do, because it's going to get too, it'll get kind of messy, is if they cite, they're going to cite it as a Class B misdemeanor, but then it goes directly to the prosecutor's office, and then we can amend charges as we read the reports, as we review what has happened. There's a lot of things that we review when we look at that. And so once it gets to the prosecutor's office, we can then take that and use the discretion there as well to say, okay, well, we think this should be charged as an infraction and go forward that way.
Maybe one last clarification too, just as a head nod. The other thing that I'm seeing is focus on the high-risk areas, which really are the interface areas and the draws. We don't have the personnel to chase phone calls one after another. That's not our intention. I don't think we also want to encourage people telling on their neighbors and things like that. We're just really concerned about the high-risk areas, and so that's probably where we're going to focus our efforts, so.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. Any other, do you have your direction? And I think we have it. That's perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for being here. And now we will turn time over to you, Galen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight is our public hearing, a number of them, on, is it not, oh, it's not. It's showing on my screen, but not up here for some reason. There we go, okay. Goes up there now. Okay, there we go. This is the opportunity which we have each year to have a number of public hearings related to the budget process, and tonight is the time where we'll have a couple of public hearings for transfers that are made, and also for the budget itself to reopen and amend the current year budget we're in, which is fiscal year 2021, that ends in June, and then to consider a tentative budget for 2022, and I'll go into the reason why that is here in a moment. But in the staff report I've given you, I've given some background to what has brought us to this point, the state laws that govern passing a budget, and the different components that we need to consider. On the screen right now is our budget process, which you've all been a part of at various junctures. It starts in January for the staff, where we go through and we look at preliminary projections of the budget, and then we have a retreat with you and to receive your vision, priorities, and framework for the budget process. And then we have our budget preparation for the budget committees that are in departments, then individual departments. And then we have a number of other meetings where we go through and review those initial requests for budget items, and then prepare a budget for you to review in individual committees, which you've all been a part of in the functional committees that are out there for various areas of the city's budget. And those took place in early April. And then we have a tentative budget adoption, which was on May 11th, which this budget was presented before. And then we have our public hearings time on what would normally be a final budget, but because of the fact that we've gone through a couple of times before this where we've talked about the need for additional revenue for the general fund and the capital fund, and that would be coming from property tax, that there was a discussion of putting a property tax increase into the budget. When that happens, then the budget is adopted in tentative form so that you have an opportunity to consider it at this point, and then to set what is called a truth and taxation hearing for later in the year, which in this case will be in August, for the public to be able to have a number of times to look at what the impact would be to their home or their business from that increase, and then to have a hearing on that proposed rate and amount of money in August, and then to finally adopt the budget with that included in it. So the remainder of that calendar there kind of outlines that process. The guiding focus for the budget is geared to meet the council policy priorities that have been developed by you over the years. And they're broken into tiers, levels. All of them are important, but they're just organized by functional area. And a number of the things that guide the process in the various departments are tied back to these visions or strategic goals of the city. And so that is what guides the process along the way. Just to give you a snapshot of the budget overall, there's the key points of interest. The balance, the budget has to be balanced. We don't print money, so we can't go into that realm, and so we have to balance between revenues that we anticipate getting in and expenditures which we anticipate making. The council policy priorities, again, are tied to that. In this budget, there is a property tax increase proposed, and that would be for calendar year 2021 taxes, which are in the fiscal year 22 budget, and that proposed rate would be 0.000967, and it would end up being $3,551,839 in total revenue from property tax. And then the tentative budget showed us as there was about 2.6 million. So that's the difference there. And that ties back to about the $950,000 that was the subject of discussion over a couple of times where we've met as to what the increase would be if we needed to take care of the financial needs which we've talked about. In this budget, there are also some fee increases, and those are listed. Some that are tax-supported areas of the city, recycling, stormwater, and sanitation, which are enterprise funds, and those changes there. There is a 2% cost of living for employees that's embedded in this, and that is to adjust for inflation for the employees. And merit increases for those that are eligible will be covered in this as well. Medical insurance, we were lucky this year, and we did not incur an increase, which is almost unheard of, which was a bright spot for us. We do have a number of new positions in the budget, which we've reviewed with you in part in the last couple of meetings. Three of those, the top three, are from the tax-supported side, which the property tax helps to address, the increase we're talking about. 2 new positions in parks, a new full-time position in information technology, a reclassification in planning that took place between a contract employee and a full-time employee. And then in our enterprise funds, position in stormwater, 3 new positions for a new line crew in light and power, and then a new full-time position in landfill. So that kind of rounds that out as a point there for the budget synopsis. Looking at the budget more in detail, just looking at where the money comes from overall, this is all funds combined, and so it's our tax supported funds and departments and those that are governed by fees and that type of thing. The majority of our citywide revenues come from user fees, and so that is those that are using power will pay the rates for their power bill, their water bill, the so forth. That is what our predominantly what our revenue stream is from. But we do have taxes, which is about 23%, and then we pull money from other various smaller sources that are outlined there. Looking at it in a format with numbers shown, a little bit of a busy schedule, but shows that the total budget, not netted out, but is $76,726,505, and that's all funds combined. And that just shows the different amounts of money by type that graph just showed. Now looking at where the money goes. Majority of the money goes for what we call operations and maintenance. So that's everything from utilities to paying for vehicles to be serviced, gassed up, for maintenance programs, for travel and training, all the different things that encompass operating the city in the various departments. And so that's about 45% of what the money goes to. The next biggest categories you might expect, because we are delivering services, are the people that it takes to operate. And so that's about 32% of where the money is going out. And then capital, which is a large part, that's everything from putting new streets down to putting in new transformers or water systems or whatever it happens to be, is about 18% of what goes out. And then there's some other smaller areas there. Looking at it again on the numbers side, that's how it rounds out, which again balances to $76,726,505 for the fiscal year 22 budget. And these are all numbers that you're familiar with because you've seen them before in the various committees, but for the public's information. Looking at it a little bit further in a drill down by departments, Light and Power is by far our largest department in the city, an enterprise fund, 41% of our expenditures, followed by Public Safety and Public Works and the other funds that you can see there. And so that rounds out the composition. Looking at them from dollars and the conglomeration of the different areas, that's how that rounds out for that same $76.7 million. And I guess we're just rounding around and looking at the same picture from a number of different angles. But this is another summary to show you each of the revenue sources by type and the areas that they cover. So everything from taxes on down to our stormwater fees and golf course fees and electricity and so forth. And so that's that same figure. And it because there are transfers that go between funds and departments, the net amount that has actually received and utilized is $72.8, almost $72.9 million. And then that balances again with the expenditures and expenses out by area, and that's where each of those departments and funds of the city lie. Looking at some key components of our revenue stream for the city, we have the different taxes broken out here just to show you what components we have some involvement with or are around us, just to show the magnitude. Now, Bountiful, of the sales tax, for instance, point of sale, we get 1%. And then that is distributed to us 50% based on point of sale or where the sale's made, and 50% based on our share of population versus the state of Utah and our other taxing entities that are out there. And then there's the other entities that have various taxes that apply for various reasons. And then there's a gasoline tax rate, and you can see the distribution there. So that will be hopefully helpful to see the components there. Going on to our power department and how we compare with our competitor, if you will, our other provider in the area, Rocky Mountain Power. Bountiful compares favorably, although we are close in some areas on our rates per kilowatt hour. It is a little bit hard to make a true comparison because Rocky Mountain Power has different rate schedules than we do. And fortunately, Jay Christensen from the Power Department and Alan Johnson put their heads together and got this boiled down to where I could do a comparison for you. So that's just kind of an at a glance to show where we rank. So there's a very big benefit to having a power department, not only because we control locally what we do, but we can also provide typically lower rates. Speaking of power department, their budget in the 22 year is $31.2 million. Now that doesn't include that 3-person line crew, which will hopefully help to reduce system downtime and improve system reliability. And so that's been something that they've looked at for a couple of years now, and that is actually in the budget and encompassed within that 31.2 million. Water department, for comparison, is $6.2 million. The streets department is $7.7 million. Sanitation and landfill funds combined are $3.9 million. Police services, our largest general fund department, with capital and general fund, is $9.3 million. Fire protection is $2.37 million, with our share that goes to the South Davis Metro Fire. That is that amount there. Stormwater, nearly $2 million to take care of that, and then our cemetery, which is about 709, almost 710,000. Now, one component of our budget process that happens early on is we have amount of money that is set aside for our RAP tax that is for nonprofits in the area that do cultural or arts focuses. And so we evaluate requests for funding from those entities. This year we had the entities on the screen that applied for funding, and we provided that funding through a process of staff reviewing and providing analysis to the council and the committee that oversees this, and presenting options there, and then having that decision made and having a recommendation to the full council on what would be funded. And this is what is in the budget now and what was recommended from that committee.
And Galen, if you don't mind, just to clarify, that is funding that is from RAP
tax
RAP
only.
tax money. Voters approved that for arts and recreation programs, and so it's a percentage of that.
Yes, it's 0.1% of the sales tax, and it is from your direction many years ago as far as how to allocate that. 75% goes to paying back the expenditures that were made in advance to do Creekside Park, and then 14% for in-city programs, so trails programs and parks projects and things of that nature that are qualified, and then this portion, which is 11% of the funding. So this is the amount of money that was recommended and was provided. And this will be paid out, subject to your approval tonight, be paid out to these entities after the fiscal year starts. The actions that are recommended for you to take tonight is to hold a number of public hearings. And so we'll run through that first off with your permission. To hold a public hearing first on the transfer from the power fund to the general fund. All of these transfers have been announced through the utility bills. There's been an announcement that's come out. It's also been on our website. It's also been on the public notice website. And it is it's just something that has been out there for a number of months and weeks, so that the people would be aware that this would be a part of the budget process. So that first transfer hearing and a public comment period, and then followed by another public hearing and comment period on the landfill to recycling fund transfer. And then following those two public hearings tonight, we'll hold another public hearing that is a combination of amending our current year's budget for areas that we feel would likely go over budget if we didn't amend those tonight. And then to adopt the tentative budget, which includes the property tax increase. And then that would be accomplished by ordinance 2021-06 to amend all those things, and then adopt related things in the budget such as rates, user fees, our long-term capital plan, and so forth. And then the final action in relation to the budget is to set formally the property tax hearing or truth in taxation for August 11th at 6 o'clock. So that's kind of a laundry list of things to do, but that is the direction there. So Mayor, with your permission, we would go to a public hearing.
Happy to do that. So with that, we will open this public hearing on FY 2022, the transfer of funds from Light and Power Fund to the general fund. If there's anyone that has any comments, you're welcome to come to the podium. Please give your name and where you live, and you're welcome to come now. Okay, with that, then I will close the public hearing, unless, do you,
I would like to talk about transfer of funds from
yeah, please.
My wife promised that she made me promise I'd be really kind about this. Ray Keller, I live at 819 Oakwood Circle, and been a Bountiful resident since I was a senior in high school, so been here for a long time. Just quickly, I heard it mentioned tonight that if no one comes to these meetings, it looks like to you folks nobody cares, right? There's a whole lot of people in Bountiful that care about what happens here and what happens in our city. I heard it mentioned just a minute ago that we're going to raise the property taxes. When Mayor Joe sat in that, he and I are buddies, as you know. I talked to him about this a couple times, but just quickly. Isn't there always a raise in property taxes as our property values go up? Doesn't that just happen kind of naturally? Do we always have to raise taxes to get what we want? And please understand, I'm not attacking anybody. There's a whole lot of people that feel this same way. Just really quickly, I've been a contractor in this area for 47 years. The most expensive roof that we have ever put on a building in those 47 years was in South Jordan. And I think if the taxpayers of South Jordan knew the cost of that roof, they would just be livid. Here's the best part. It was a roof on a sewer department, and it protects excrement. And it's the most expensive roof we've ever done. And so sometimes I think we just need to take a look at what's happening and be just a little wise with the way we spend the money. Now, I've never sat in your chairs, so I don't know that for positive, but I would bring that up because a lot of people feel that same way. And they feel the same way too. My house up on Oakwood Circle is worth more today than it was a while ago. And if you don't change the tax rate at all, you're going to get more. Everything we buy costs more, and so 7% of more is more. I just share that with you. That's my concern, that it's so easy. Let me just say it this way. Remember, attacking no one. When I want to spend $1 in my business, I got to figure out a way to go earn it. And that's sometimes a real chore. So if I'm going to buy a new piece of equipment, we go out and earn the money and then we buy it. And it seems to me like sometimes in government, hey, we need something, let's just raise taxes. And sometimes we don't even consider, like the sewer plant down in South Jordan, all that money didn't need to be spent. And I mean, it's a ton of money, and it didn't need to be spent to protect excrement. Anyway, that's why I came.
Thank you, Mr. Keller.
All right.
Appreciate it. Any others that would like to make comments about the general fund? If not, then we will close this public hearing, and we will open another public hearing. The transfer of funds from the landfill fund to the recycling fund. And so I will open the hearing up, and anyone who has a comment is welcome. Do you want to come again? All right. So, oh, gosh, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay. And I asked my wife tonight, I say, how much of our bill for that blue garbage can do we spend a month? And I don't know. But I just know this. If recycling what we put in that recycling bin isn't worth it, just take it down the dump and dump it. And that's, I don't know enough about that either.
But I just think we got to transfer funds when we're already paying money to get that stuff taken somewhere. And if it's not worth anything, then it's not worth anything. Just put it in the dump. That was my comment on that one.
Thanks, Mr.
yeah.
Keller. Yeah, we'll have another one here in a minute. Any other comments? Okay, if not, then I will close this public hearing on the transfer of funds from the landfill, and we'll go directly to FY 2021 amended budget and the FY 2022 tentative budget, and I will open the public hearing for the budget process. Please.
Okay, so Alex Densley. So I've come to your fund meetings where you had all the taxing and everything else on it. And this is why I like public meetings, and this is why I'm glad that we live in America, that I can actually come up here and be able to express, you know, some excitement, some frustrations, and everything in between, right? I am very excited that, you know, our city does a pretty bang-up job of what it does. For my job, I run around to all kinds of cities, so I get to see all kinds of different aspects of cities. However, adopting this tentative budget has been one of the most frustrating processes I have seen, and I put it back to you guys as a council. It was very frustrating to see you guys put the wording in that bond that didn't explain that you didn't have the park staff set up for that. It was very frustrating to know that we're going to get hit with that increase. We were here 2 weeks ago and we have the Davis Rec Center coming for us for a new bond to tag onto their additional one. It was frustrating to see another word instead of taxes, fees. There was your garbage fee, you had the slide up there. There's your additional recycling fee. Here's your additional power fee. Here's your additional fees. As Mr. Keller pointed out, we're all under stress I understand the city is too, but is this necessarily the right time to increase that on it? Those are kind of the frustrations because my salary isn't going up. I'm still dealing with the same frustrations as everybody else. My wife complained to me today because she went to the grocery store and went over budget because everything's more expensive. It's just frustrating to see us tentatively adopt a budget when we have spent so much cash, gone over budget on multiple items, where as a family person, like can't just pull extra money or say, hey, I'm going to increase a tax, or hey, we're going to do these things just because. So I understand that we are tentatively adopting this budget, and that we'll have it further on, in August when we have the truth in taxation, that if there's any way that we can figure out something somewhere on this, whether it's, I don't know on it because I haven't had a chance to go through that monster of a budget. I know it's like, an encyclopedia worth. So well done on your end for going through it. But just as we tentatively look at this, I know we've played with the numbers and we've looked at the different things, but just if we can make sure going forward, like I don't want to be up here next year with, hey, guess what? We don't have enough funding again. Or, hey, we messed up on, this Washington Elementary thing. Like we're going to need money out of this to help cover certain things. So just as we go forward with this budget, just please work with us on it, because everybody's wanting our money right now. And at least for me, I'm sure as heck not getting a pay increase to cover what everybody else wants. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. Anyone else that would like to make a comment concerning this public hearing? Okay, if not, then I will close that public hearing and appreciate those who participated. Next item is consideration of ordinance 2021-06, adopting amended tentative budgets, approving rates and fees, related policies, and adopting compensation schedules. So I would look for any questions, maybe directed towards Galen from the council.
I have a question about in the amendment requests. So I understand that the pro golf sales were up $26,000 over what was expected. And then down in the enterprise funds where it talks about the credit card merchant fees, I just wondered, is that really the right amount that $16,000. Because if they sold 26,000 more than projected, then would $16,000 really be the right amount just for credit card merchant fees?
I can perhaps answer that.
Okay.
It wasn't just that the revenues were up, it was how people were purchasing their rounds of golf. You may remember that prior to this year, people would take a reservation and then they wouldn't pay until they showed up. Now everything is required to be paid for in advance to book their fee. It's dramatically decreased the number of no-shows, but it's dramatically increased the percentage of the sales that are done via credit card. So what you're seeing is a reflection of both increased green fees and an increase in the percentage of people that are paying via credit card.
Thank you. And I know, Galen, I think you're the one who has revisited this before, right? I know that we've talked about credit card fees, merchant fees.
services. Mhm.
Yeah, and so I'm just hoping that they're getting the best deal they can.
They have some unique situations at the golf course that we have a different processor for their transactions than we do for the other transactions we do. It's been a bit of a challenge finding a processor that will work with their software, and so we've had to get a best fit there. They've negotiated the best rate I think that they can get for what they can operate with, and so that's something we look at all the time to try to get a best fit for the costs that we can get, and we look at it for all areas, not just the golf course, but yeah.
Just as a note too, I'm grateful that the golf course as an enterprise fund pays for itself based on user fees. So that's great. But, you know, just if I appreciate you looking out for that. I know you do. And I just hope that, especially if they're paying a lot more in credit card fees, I'm hoping we can revisit that, make sure that we're getting the best, you know.
It is a lot driven by the volume, but yeah, we are looking at the per transaction as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kendall. Any other comments or questions?
I have a question it's something that comes up routinely from residents about how we set the certified rate. And I think sometimes we would benefit from an explanation of how the legislature dictates the new growth formula and the certified rate. Because I've had that come up from residents, and so for those that are here that stuck it out, it might be a helpful explanation from either Gary or Galen.
Okay. Would you like to do that, or would you like? Okay. The property tax rate, what they call the certified rate, is every year the county and the state of Utah, their property tax division goes through, they assess properties within the state and each local area, and then they have a process where they will go through adjustments. They have a board of equalization that each taxpayer can request a review of their property if they feel like it's overvalued for tax purposes, and they can request abatements that way. There's also abatements for other things like those that are on retirement, that are elderly, veterans, that type of thing, where there can be adjustments to the property tax. And then each of the taxing entities, which Bountiful City is one of them, and then within Bountiful, for instance, you have other taxing entities that are part of your tax bill that are the county, the school district, and special districts and so forth. They will each need to make a request for a portion of the property tax, and so each year those requests are made to the county, and there's a tax process they go through, and they calculate what the assessed value is versus what amount of money is needed, calculate that amount out. They factor in the Board of Equalization filings that they feel they'll get, and do an average over a number of years to compensate for that. So there's not just one big year where somebody goes in and requests an adjustment. They try to even that out over a number of years. And then also to try to take into account the collection rate, because not everybody pays initially. Sometimes people will let the property tax go to a tax sale before they'll pay. And so they try to factor that into as well. And so the certified rate is taking the amount of money that the entity is asking for, and year after year, the only amount of money that you can get over and above that, there was a comment made about isn't there a natural increase? The only increase that comes in Utah, at least, is what is called new growth. So if you have new areas that come in, new homes that are part of your community that are as of January 1st of every year, the lien date, then those properties are added to the tax base, and you're entitled to have, as a taxing entity, the taxes that are from that new property, or in addition to that, any improvements that are made to properties. So if somebody finishes a basement or adds a garage on or something like that, the value of that addition would be added to the base as well. And then every year, you can get those new growth amounts, but the base, as it goes up from valuation increases, those are not captured. In fact, the rate that we get to adopt that applies to the base of everybody's valuation is reduced so that we don't capture the increase in your property value. We only capture new growth, so those new properties and so forth. And then in order to get any additional funds, if there is a need for that, which we've talked about tonight, the only way to accomplish that is to be as transparent as we can, which is called truth in taxation, where we present our case for asking for additional funds, and then have the opportunity for the public to weigh in on the merits of that, and to have our elected officials hear that conversation, and then to be able to proceed based on the testimony that's given by the public. And then every year we go through this process again and receive the funds that are allowed that won't exceed what new growth gives us, and then that's what comes in the new year to us, unless we ask for additional. So I don't know if that's clear as mud, or if there's anything
So
else we
just
need
to
talk about.
clarify, if someone's taxes go up, we don't get more.
Well,
Well,
way to-
their valuation is what you're saying? Yeah.
The way to, I would say that just a little differently. This is directly to your point, Mr. Is Olson? Yeah. Keller. Sorry about that, Mr. Keller. Yes, if your home appraises for more, what happens is our tax rate goes down so that we collect this exact same dollar amount. That's how the state law works. It's kind of fascinating. If you look at your tax bill over time, there may be even years where your valuation goes up, but your tax bill will actually be less because of the lowered rate. That's how truth in taxation works in the state. The complicating factor is that we're not the only taxing entity. I think there's a chart that maybe you can find, Galen.
This one, I think this is one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bountiful, for instance, is our proposed rate is 8% of the total amount of property tax that you'll pay. The biggest share of your property tax is the school district.
And the school district will have 4 or 5 different rates, any one of which may go up based on a variety of factors. And
debt service or whatever else.
So you may live in an area that has 15 or 10 overlapping tax rates. One of those might change and go up. Bountiful actually hasn't increased our tax rate to collect more money, but one time in 20 years, which was, I think, 4 years ago. So it's an interesting state law, and it's a great question, and one that's not very well understood by the majority of people. Did that help?
Gary, would you say that again about our increased tax rate in how many years?
Yes. So
Say that again.
Yeah, Bountiful Cities gone through truth and taxation and increased our property tax rate one time in 20 years. It was 4 years ago to add 2 new police officers and to reimburse ourselves for money that was taken by the state to build homeless shelters in other communities.
That's very significant, I think, and is a very plus for this city.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions in regards to this item? If not, I would look for a motion.
I had one other clarifying question.
Okay.
It's, Galen, it's the one I had emailed you. In the Parks and Rec Budget Committee, where we reviewed the RAP tax grant applications. There were some of the requests from the Bountiful Davis Arts Center that weren't able to be funded. They didn't meet the criteria, and it left us a little bit of a balance there that the committee wanted to recommend that we move to resurfacing the pickleball courts at Cheese Park. I had emailed Galen earlier to help understand where in the, and I'm not quite that old yet, Galen, in the teeny tiny print of the spreadsheet.
It's not actually in there, no. It's actually in the tentative budget, so if you go to the RAP tax and look on the, it's divided into the section that is what we spent as of the end of December of the year we're in, and then a 6-month column, and then what we expect to spend by the end of the year. It's embedded within that amount of money that will be for what you're getting at.
So I just wanted to make sure that the rest of the council knew that we had made that recommendation, and that's where it showed up.
Good.
It'll be spent out of the RAP tax fund.
If there are no other questions, I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the adoption of ordinance 2021-06, adopting the amended and tentative budgets and approving the rates and fees and policies related to adopting the compensation schedules.
And
Second.
Thank you, Millie. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that does pass. This next item is just setting a public hearing for truth in taxation in relationship to the general property taxes on August 11th, 2021 at 6 p.m. If there's not any questions, I'll look for a motion.
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. These next couple of items, 2 items, go back to you, Mr. Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I start my remarks, I'd just like to acknowledge Craig Christensen being here tonight. I asked Craig to attend since this is a fairly important topic for he and I. I know that for myself, I've been concerned about the state of our water for most of the year. When we didn't get very much snow, when we didn't see the usual runoff in the creeks this year, I began to be very concerned. I've given you what I thought was a fairly good explanation from Weber Basin about the state of the water in our area in the state. We're in a pretty dire situation. I'm waiting for some graphics to come up here. Here we go. So as I wrote this memo, I couldn't help but think of a phrase that we use around the office quite a bit, and that's eat the elephant one bite at a time. I kind of felt like this memo was describing the elephant one sentence at a time. So I hope you'll bear with me. I'm sure that we're all aware that the water system in Bountiful is fairly complex. The distribution of water in the city is equally complex because while the water department provides the majority of culinary water in town, we do not provide the majority of irrigation water in town. So this graphic you see on the screen shows the areas of service for irrigation water. The blue area in the center that covers most of the city is our favorite sister entity known as Bountiful Irrigation, not to be confused as a Bountiful City Department, but that happens occasionally. But you can see that they serve the majority of our residents. To the north of us, we have a little piece that's served by Dual Creek Irrigation Company, and to the south is the South Davis Water District. The area that we are going to focus on tonight, though, is the area in yellow. This is the area where the water that our residents use for irrigation is basically culinary water, it's drinking water. It's the highest quality water that we can produce. In the 20-plus years that I've worked for the city, every summer has been a concern. And that's largely because of the growth that we have had on the south and southeast parts of town. We have some fairly significant water infrastructure down there. We have a booster station that has 3 very, very large pumps and motors in it just to provide water to the Summerwood, Bridlewood area. And each year, I described it in the memo as a game of cat and mouse. We watch that very close because the water tank levels fluctuate a lot. Now, in my memo, I addressed the importance of water tank levels, and that came to be reinforced not too long ago when we had a day when we had 2 fires in town. It took us more than a week to recover the water in our tanks in our culinary system because of the demand of those fires. It didn't help that we had a well that was out of service, one that we rely on heavily in that part of town. But it drove home the importance of really of where we are with our ability to provide and move water around town. Now that's improved greatly over the last few years with water line replacements that we've done, other tanks and booster stations that we've installed. We now have better ability to move water from the north end of town. We could move it all the way around to the south end of town if we needed to, but it would come at a fairly high cost of pumping. I don't think it's any secret if you've been watching the news that we're all kind of bracing for a very challenging summer, and I think that we're probably just at the beginning of it. One of the big indicators that we use with the engineering and the water department to kind of gauge where we are water-wise is the amount of water that can be produced by the water treatment plant. The water treatment plant is really the crown jewel of our system. In the wintertime, it can supply nearly all the water we need for the entire town. We usually only have to supplement that with a couple of our other wells that may not run full-time, but the water treatment plant can provide a significant amount of water. In the summertime, however, it's a little bit more of a challenge. Usually in the spring, we have a high runoff, and we're able to take advantage of that and treat a lot of water, roughly 1,000 to 1,100 gallons a minute, and provide that to the residents. But as the summer wears on, we typically see the runoff decline, and so much to the point where we have to turn on a couple of wells that are in the upper part of the system to supplement our ability to treat water literally within the plant itself. The creek doesn't yield enough water to really operate the equipment, and so we turn on the wells to give it something to treat. Craig reported this morning that the production of the water treatment plant's down to about 650 gallons a minute. That's usually a value that we don't see for another month. It's a little bit concerning. The good news is that we have the Calder well back up and running, so we do have another source in the south end of town. We also have been able to purchase a little water from South Davis Water. We expect to have the ability to purchase more water from South Davis Water if the need arises. I think, though, that one of the very best things that we can do, though, is to begin to change the culture of how we use water in our city. You often hear people say that we live in a desert, but we don't treat it like a desert. We treat it like the Amazon forest. Literally, the people who work in our streets are amazed at the amount of water that is used in our town. And I hope that I can maybe show you a little bit of that here. Hope you can see this. For last year, I went through and pulled the records of our water use. Now you can see we have between, well, roughly 11,000 accounts that we bill every month. And this is total water that's used throughout the city. If you look over on the far right column, you can see the billed usage. And in April of this year, we billed for 76.6 million gallons of water. I don't know about you, but that's a lot of water. It's almost hard to imagine that much water. You can see that amount of water rise as we go through the summer, down to a peak of almost 201 million gallons of water for September. Now, the columns in the middle represent the number of users who use certain amounts of water. So there are several thresholds there. And you can see that generally speaking, in the heat of the summer, about half of the people are using less than 10,000 gallons. I think what that represents are the people in the center of town who are served by Bountiful irrigation. They don't have a high irrigation demand. And so that's reflected in just their culinary use in their house, roughly 10,000 gallons. As you look down through those columns, you'll see, though, the numbers of people increasing the amount of water they use dramatically. In some cases, it's 10 times. There are 10 times the number of people using that amount of water as you move through the year. That represents a huge demand on our system. So why is that really significant? I think this is the key. If you consider how big your yard is, and for this example, I just kind of roughly pulled a few lots in the south part of town. If you irrigated 1/3 of an acre, now, I have about 1/2 an acre that I take care of at my house, and I don't irrigate all of it, but 1/3 of an acre, this is assuming a full 1/3 of an acre being irrigated. And the recommendation is that your grass needs anywhere from 1/2 an inch to 2 inches of water, depending on your soil type. That represents a fairly small amount of water compared to the categories we see here in the graph. So if you watered twice a week and you put down 1/2 an inch of water, you're using about 34,000 gallons. Seems like there's a few people who are using substantially more than that. If you put down 1 inch, and that's probably somewhere in the bench areas of town where the soils are sandy, you don't really get a lot of lingering effects from irrigating. The water goes quickly. You're using 100,000 gallons, and that's in a month. I think that demonstrates fairly well the kind of uses that we're talking about in town. In my memo, I tried to summarize some of the restrictions that we hear about so frequently, just so we would have a feel for what's happening around us. As I was doing that, Weber Basin issued their, I'm going to call it a suggestion. It really didn't carry much more weight than that, that their recommendation was that people restrict their watering to 2 times a week. As Craig and I discussed this, we felt like 2 times a week for our residents up on the hill was probably a little too restrictive at this point. Those people live in an area where the fire danger is significant. We've had, I'm sad to say, experience with fire in our neighborhoods. And we felt that a recommendation for additional watering was warranted at this time. Well, this has a little more impact than just what are we asking our residents to do. I think it's important to step back and take a little bit broader view. The real goal of this is preservation of a resource. it doesn't matter how much money we have in the bank at the end of the day if we don't have any water in our well. Drilling a new well is very expensive. And I'm not sure that that'll solve the problem. In my career, I know we've drilled at least one well that came up essentially dry. And that's not an unusual experience when you're in the well drilling business. The second impact, though, is revenue. It's a two-edged sword. If we're asking people to cut back on their water use, we're also asking them to cut back on the amount of revenue to our water department. We also run the risk that we may have to pay a little more to acquire water if our resources are depleted. Asking our residents to use a little less water is going to take a little enforcement. We're going to have someone to deal with the issues, with the complaints, and that's going to take away from the other mission of the water department, which is to maintain our system and provide quality water. We can probably talk Francisco into getting a little help from his department, but we don't quite have our arms around that need, how big that's going to be, but it's surely going to take some manpower. The other thing, though, that we need to recognize is the effect that it's going to have on our city properties. The Weber Basin recommendation to change our watering practices will apply to all of the areas that are served by Bountiful irrigation that are city properties. Brock was very thoughtful in preparing his priority list for city sites and how they were maintained and the attention that the Parks Department gives to those. Those higher priority sites we think are still high priorities. We need to do our very best to keep them in the best shape possible. Brock asked me to tell you that currently the parks are being watered at 80% of their normal run times. We're not watering on Sunday unless our clocks get reset for whatever reason. And we're following the 6 p.m. to 10 a.m. watering time. He's very conscientious of that, and they're working hard to follow that. We do have some facilities in town that need some serious consideration. Among those being the City Hall campus, the cemetery, the golf course, our Veterans Park. We have other parts of our facilities that may not respond well to changes in irrigation practices, and we need to acknowledge that.
Sorry, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So which of those that you just mentioned are use secondary water? All of them?
All of those, yep. The facilities that we have that use culinary water exclusively would be North Canyon Park. And some of this, there's a couple smaller properties up there also. But the majority of our sites use secondary water. That's good. We do have some facilities that are very sensitive to irrigation needs. Lewis Park, Rocket Park, the fields at Hannah Holbrook Elementary. Those are all very, very sensitive to the amount of water they get. They can either look really good or they can look pretty tough. I know that we're asking a lot of the Parks Department. We've asked them to put their best foot forward, do their very best job, and now we're going to, in a way, take away some of their most important resources to make these sites look presentable to the public. I think the other issue that's worthy of some discussion I didn't include in the memo is how do we get the word out? You know, we're very lucky to use our social media. to get the word out on a lot of things, but I don't know how effective that's going to be. I counted up about 1,300 homes that this is going to affect. I know in our department, when we have an issue in the street in front of someone's house, we have a door hanger that we can go put on their front door. And a door hanger might be an appropriate way to notify all of the affected residents. It might be a mailer, it might be a combination of both, but it's going to take a little bit of legwork. It's going to take some resources to implement this program. Now I guess I'll move on to the recommendation. I mean, this is really where the rubber hits the road, right? I gave a lot of thought to what I felt would be the very best thing that we could do. It needed to be simple. It needed to be intuitive. It needed to be something that people had heard before. And I think the concept of having an even numbered address and being able to water on an even numbered day was pretty simple. Same for the odd numbered addresses. And then watering 3 times a week. Craig and I felt like that was a good spot to start with. With Gary's wisdom, we would suggest that Wednesdays be a day that we not allow watering and allow the system to recover. Let me just put this into perspective a little bit. The largest tank, well, not the largest tank, but one of the larger tanks we have in the system that's fairly common is 1.5 million gallons. For most of our booster pump facilities, this would be a large amount of water, but we do have the ability to do it, to pump this amount. If we were to pump 800 gallons a minute, it would take 31 hours to fill that 1.5 million gallon reservoir. And we have like 5 or 6 of those 1.5 million gallon reservoirs around town. It takes a minute. We need that recovery time. We need it for the irrigation demand. We need it for the potential fire demand. I can remember times where we've talked about tanks having 2 or 3 feet of water in them at all for whatever reason over the course of a summer. Maybe it was a leak. Maybe it was a valve that malfunctioned. But that's very critical when you're trying to operate a system that relies on water in the tank to move it on up the hill. I'm not sure that this is going to be the only time we're going to have to make a change. And that's the reason for the next bullet point. If we have to make a change and increase the restrictions, I wanted to get that out front. I wanted people to understand that we'd probably knock another day off of the watering cycle. I'd like to move on just a moment to the enforcement part. This was a real wrestling match. I don't want to be perceived as someone who is heavy-handed or, you know, looking for a pound of flesh for something that, you know, maybe is an honest mistake. But I do recognize that this is a fairly serious discussion. As with most of the cities around us, the first violation we would recommend to be a warning. The second offense probably needs to be a little bit stiffer action. And currently in the code, a second offense would allow for a $100 fine to be added to a utility bill. I thought it would be a good opportunity to include an education component in this and give people an opportunity to evaluate their sprinkling systems and come up with some modifications. Maybe make some repairs, change what they're doing. I can't tell you how many times in the last 20 years when we've had complaints about irrigation water, one of the things that's come out of the discussion is, well, I don't even know how to operate my clock. My landscaper set it and I just let it go. I'd be afraid to ask I'd be afraid to know how many places that's true in town. With the recommendations from a third party, and there are several third parties who could do an analysis of a sprinkling system, we'd waive that fee. But on the third offense, we'd probably not waive that fee and have that be something serious. I think it's important to have people sign an agreement that they acknowledge that they're going to change their behavior and be compliant with our requirements. The fourth offense, this is, hopefully we never get to the fourth offense, a $500 fine. If we get this far after the previous actions, we feel like it would be appropriate to terminate irrigation service. Now, most of these people in this part of town are required by law to have a backflow preventer. A backflow preventer is a device that would prevent water from their irrigation system coming back into the culinary system and contaminating it with dirty water. So that would be an appropriate place to shut that system off, still keep water into their home. With the fifth offense, I hope that we never get there with this. This is the most drastic of all measures that we could take, and that would be to terminate their service, their entire service, for the remainder of the irrigating season. I don't know about you, but last year when when my kids were at home and my wife was at home and we were wondering how long the TP supply was going to last, I would hate to compound that or compare it to wondering what we were going to do for water. Those few gallons of water that are in my basement for an emergency use, they wouldn't last very long. This is pretty serious stuff. And I think if we get to a conversation about a fifth offense, it's probably time to have some pretty serious action. Now, I know that I've not covered all the parts of the elephant. I hope I've covered the important parts of the elephant. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I have a question. So this is only pertaining to areas that do not have secondary water.
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm just wondering if we could simplify by saying something like residents that have even number homes, water Monday, Wednesday, Friday, residents that have odd number homes, water Tuesday, Thursday, or you know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't we, as opposed to throwing Wednesdays and have like Sundays off? Or, for example, because I know for my system, it would work better if we could set it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if we could set it and not have to worry about alternating weeks, like having Wednesdays off. So just for simplicity's sake for residents, in order to accomplish that, I'm just wondering.
Can I get this one? Sure. As Lloyd was, it's funny, you talk about something for a long, long time and you think you have all the bases covered. And we have talked about this a lot. And it occurred to me while Lloyd was talking, the same concern that you have, but it comes down to how clocks are programmed. I happen to be one who does know what my clock does, and it does not pay any attention to which day of the month it is, whether it's the 11th or the 12th, but it does know if it's a Monday, a Wednesday, or a Friday. And so I was going to suggest that we do exactly what you're proposing, which say odd. So I'll just, and I would make this recommendation in the ordinance. And then I'll explain about Wednesdays, if I may. But I would suggest that the ordinance say homes with even-numbered addresses are permitted to water on Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. Homes with odd-number addresses are permitted to water on Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday. So Monday, Thursday, Saturday, or Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. The reason for Wednesday, the original recommendation from staff was just like you said, Sunday. But the problem with Sunday is if we're going to enforce this, we don't have anybody working on Sunday. it's much easier for us to enforce nobody watering on Wednesdays to give us the opportunity to refill our reservoirs when we have employees out driving around town, and we don't have to charge overtime to bring people in. So that was the idea of Wednesday. We can do whatever you want, but that was the thinking behind it.
And I think these are really good. I mean, these are tough. I remember we made some jokes about people a few years ago that were up on Bountiful Boulevard that were using, as I recall, it was an absurd amount of, it was like 10,000 gallons a month. And it was just, their sprinklers were going on all the time. So, you know, these are, if you remember that, Lloyd. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I could characterize that by saying that there are 3 users, I'm gonna call them the power users in that part of town, that between the 3 of them would use that entire 1.5 million gallon reservoir themselves. 3.
Yeah. So, you know, maybe just a thought that I have because of this. One was by accident. I can't take care of my own yard very much anymore, so I changed the yard, my wife and I, so that we took 40% of the yard and made it so that I didn't have to maintain it. And of course, that's what we're trying to, it's one of the things that I hope we're going to address here maybe next is, I like grass, I do. I'm not espousing that we just go to rocks and gravel and that's all we see. I don't think that's pleasant. For me, at least it's not. But reducing the amount has really made a difference in my yard, for maintenance, but also when the water people came, there was just there's a lot of places they didn't have to water anymore. So I think along with this, sometime one of the things that's a follow-up, in my opinion, is to encourage and teach and maybe by ordinance in some ways require a certain amount of reduction in what we have to water.
The state is going through a process right now to encourage conservation, and there's a statewide conservation plan for the Davis-Weber area. The goal is to reduce water consumption, I think it's another 20%, like in the next 20 years. Those recommendations are coming. They're in the pipeline.
I don't know if the council's had a chance to go up to the Weber Water Basin Conservancy District buildings up there in Layton, but they have all this landscaping that's just so impressive, really trying to teach people how to do it. So I think that's important. It's easy for me, I can just say, this is easy for me to sign this ordinance with the changes that I think are smart that you pointed out, Kendallin.
It's a little tricky because this affects, I mean, my neighbors, I live in this area where we don't have irrigation, secondary water, and so it's frustrating because we already pay a lot more to water our lawns. But I think that we understand why we need to have these restrictions, but it's tough.
Lloyd, can I ask you a question? Sure. Is it wise to fertilize our lawns at this time? Or is it better to hold off on the fertilization and I think the more we fertilize, the more the grass is going to grow, which might mean more water or more burn spots. I don't know. Should we just hold off on fertilizing for a while?
I'm not a lawn care expert. I mean, I have some lawn at my house. Don't drive by and look at it, and because you'll know that I'm not a lawn care expert. But I've held off personally on fertilizing, and I've gone to putting my mower on the highest setting. I think the best thing we can do is leave our grass long.
I've done that for years. I always leave the grass long. I always do. But I also don't fertilize so I can cut the grass and put it in the garden. And then we till it in. Another thought that I was having is that I like the idea what you mentioned, maybe a door hanger. I'm wondering about if we could use our Bountiful City Youth Council and maybe get those young people involved, and we could go through the city with a door hanger that explains what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish, and it'd be on a more personal basis if you found it on your door rather than going to the website or something like that. I think that may be more personal.
I was hoping that the pickleball people would stay, and we could utilize them.
Give them a job.
Well, the skateboarders too, that'd be quick. They could do it half the time.
Be helpful. Any other questions for Lloyd? Because if there isn't, then we'll look for a motion.
Gary, can you remind me how you would change 1A and 1B, so I write that down?
Yes. So on 1A, I would delete days with even numbers and replace that with Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. And on 1B, I would delete odd numbered days and add Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday.
That's odd number.
Okay. I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
I think do you have to make the motion to amend?
Excuse me.
And to amend,
And I
yes,
motion
thank
that
you.
we amend the watering days to Monday, Thursday, Sunday. Is that correct? For even days?
Correct?
Monday, Thursday, Saturday?
Monday, Thursday, Saturday.
Monday, Thursday, Saturday for even days, and Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday for odd
Tuesday,
days.
Friday,
Tuesday, Friday, Sunday.
Tuesday, Friday.
Oh,
Tuesday, Friday, Sunday.
yeah, there we go. Oh, my
Tuesday,
gosh.
Friday,
We're good.
Sunday.
Who's on first?
For odd days.
So,
Wonderful.
okay.
With that, I'd be happy to second.
Thanks, Kate. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Thanks, Lloyd. You know, I think that was a really teaching time for us. Thank you very much. And you don't have a second going because we've already done that. So I'm going to turn some time over to Francisco.
Thank you, Mayor. We would like the City Council to consider reappointing Mr. Jim Clark to the Planning Commission. He's not just here supporting skateboarders and pickleball people, but, and also we would like you to reappoint Mr. Dave Badham and Scott Schlegel to the Administrative Committee. The Planning Commission appointment is a 4-year commitment, and the Administrative Committee is 2 years. That's all I have.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I just want to apologize to you, Jim, because we should have moved you up in the meeting.
Oh, no.
No.
No, Jim has,
Yes.
he's here to learn. This
Jim.
is all of our folks here.
I get to serve on the Planning Commission with Jim Clark, so if you don't mind, I'd love to make a motion that we extend another term to him on the Planning Commission and thank him for his service.
Yes, thank you.
I want to second because I walk past him walking my dog just about every morning.
Good. Okay, and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Does the motion include also
Yes.
Scott Schlegel and Dave Badham to the admin
I
committee?
suppose.
Okay,
Yes.
just making sure.
Yes, I'd like to nominate them as well.
That
thanks.
includes that, and so we get a second on that.
That is
Kate,
how I
thank you.
interpreted the second, yep.
And all in favor again?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Hill. That's his job to do that. Okay, so Tyson, it's you. This looks like the shortest sentence and the longest item that we may have tonight.
Well, thank you for your time tonight, Mayor and members of the City Council. So tonight, we have before you a resolution to approve a interlocal agreement between the city and the South Davis Recreation District. As you're aware, and for the public's information, the city has contracted with the South Davis Recreation District for many years, since 2007, to perform administrative services for the district. We perform accounting functions, finance functions, IT functions, payroll, HR, treasury management functions. We help maintain their fields and plow their parking lot. And so we do a number of administrative services for the Recreation District. In return, we are compensated for staff time and expense expenses on that. And this interlocal agreement has embedded in it all of those terms and requirements for both the city to provide the services and the associated fees. We'll let you know that last night the South Davis Recreation District Board met and approved this interlocal agreement. And so on their side, they've said, yes, let's move forward with another year of these services provided by Bountiful City. And so this would extend our services through fiscal year 2022, so June 30th of 2022. And so basically the same services we've been providing. It's just renewing the agreement for one more year. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for your work, and I'm glad that we evaluate every year.
Yeah.
So,
I'll look for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Millie. And a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Chris. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, I know we want to adjourn really fast, but I have to say something about Tyson. He goes there to the rec district, and it is not easy. Tyson, and you see the smile that Galen has. I'm on that board, and it's not that easy. And there are those there, a couple people that think that we're overcharging the rec district for all of our services, and they have gone and sought out other people for the prices that to see if they can get a better price than we're doing it. It just doesn't happen, and it's not as professional. And they find that out every so often. They address the same issue, and I'm telling you, we are so fortunate to have our financial department, Tyson and Galen, to answer questions that. And some of these folks are finance people. I mean, Mayor Arvey, and I love Mayor Arvey from North Salt Lake, but he's an MBA finance guy, and he asks hard questions, which that's what we should have on boards. We should have people that can ask the hard questions, but we get it down to where Mayor Arvey is saying, "Wow, this is the best deal. let's go forward," and that's important to us. So, well done, Tyson. Thanks for, you're not playing basketball and scoring and everything. You're just keeping track of everything, you and Galen, so we really appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.
So I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
we have one more, right?
Oh, we do have one more? I'm sorry. Do we do?
Well, we have to adjourn and go into an RDA meeting to
Oh,
approve
that's
the
right.
RDA.
And
Excuse me, that's right.
I have one more item too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, the fraud risk assessment.
Yep. If we don't do this agenda item, the state auditor's office will let us know, I promise.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. I got you.
Well, thank you again for your time. So in brief, this process is a process that's been asked by the state auditor's office of every local government within the state of Utah. So last year, if the council and mayor will remember, we spent a great deal of time talking about this new requirement that the state auditor's office has put out. And so it's an annual requirement, and it's an opportunity for us as management and for the city council as an elected body to review the risks that are inherent in operating any type of business or entity, any type of local government. And this is a process that we do ongoing as management regardless. So before the state auditor office asked us to do this, we were doing it. And because truly, when we're talking about fraud risk and the risks that we have as a public entity, you have to take those seriously. And so as management, we have always gone through our operations and said, where are we at risk for fraud, for theft, for misappropriation of assets of the city? Where are we at risk? And we put in place internal controls and procedures and policies that help mitigate those risks. So this has been something we've always been doing. It's just now become a mandatory requirement from the state auditor's office. So they put together a checklist of specific areas that they wanted to focus on that I will say this is not an exhaustive list of all internal controls, all policies, all things that could mitigate fraud. This is I will say this is very much not an exhaustive list of that. So that being said, the State Auditor's Office felt that these specific areas were important enough that they wanted to highlight them and say every one of the governmental entities within the state should go through this every year and look at these specific areas. So as per the requirement, we went through all of these specific areas and found that the city is in a good position from a fraud risk perspective. The State Auditor's Office basically has 5 categories of fraud risk. They determine those as very low, low, moderate, high, and very high risk. So happy to report that Bountiful, based off of the scoring, is in the low category, so the next to lowest category for fraud risk. And again, this is based off of the State Auditor's Office selected procedures and policies. And so based off of this, we were in that low category. And this is not an action item for the board or for the city council. This is just an opportunity to discuss the internal risk assessment process that we went through and to ask specific questions that you might have about fraud risk, about internal controls, procedures, and give you this opportunity in a public setting to where even the residents could find out a little bit more information. So I'm happy to discuss any one of these items or any other areas of concern that you might have, but this was the assessment that we went through, and both Gary and I have certified this and will be reporting that to the State Auditor's Office, probably later this week. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Tyson, I have a question for you.
Please.
As I look down at this, we're in low, 316 to 355. If I look at the possible yeses compared to the possible points, we're actually 60 above. Why aren't we considered very low rather than low?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you'll notice that there are the 3 items that we have scored as 0.
Yes.
So the first one is, do any members our employees and elected officials required to annually commit in writing to abide by a statement of ethical behavior? So when we're looking at internal controls and policies and procedures, there's a couple things that we have to weigh. What's the cost of doing this versus the benefit of doing it? And as a management staff, we've looked at this specific one and have said, what's the cost of annually requiring our employees, our elected officials, everyone that works for the city or is appointed to the city to commit to an annual and sign a form every year that we collect, we maintain, we process. What's the cost of doing that versus the benefit? So we do believe that we have put in place other policies, other procedures that already state that we hold ourselves to a high ethical standard. And by requiring our employees and elected officials to sign our policies and procedures when they're hired and the expectation of ongoing training, we felt that this one does not provide as much benefit for the cost. So it's a lot of tracking, a lot of effort to reach out to 270-something people, get them to sign a form and maintain that form for who knows how many years. So we looked at the cost versus the benefit, and we felt that this one just was not worth that additional 20 points.
I think that totally makes sense, but I'm wondering, do you know if when it says in writing, do you know if that would also refer to, like, if you were to send out a Google form to every employee and have them sign it electronically? Do you know if that would?
That's a good question. I would imagine that would qualify, just so long as we could verify, the State Auditor's Office could verify that every specific individual that works for or is appointed to the city did complete that annually.
Just wondering.
Yeah.
I would just note on that particular topic that fraud is defined as deception or dishonesty. And so typically people that are willing to commit fraud are also willing to sign statements that say that they won't.
So if there are no other questions for Tyson, we'll move forward. Any other questions?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Tyson.
Thank you for your
time. We appreciate you very much. And I'll look for a motion to adjourn to an RDA meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Good, thank you. We'll move forward and we'll welcome everyone to the Redevelopment Agency of Bountiful City agenda. This is Tuesday, June 22nd, 8 p.m. We have Kate and Chris and Kendall and myself and Randy and Millie, and Richard's excused out of town with the Power Board. Look for consideration of approval of minutes for December 8th, and also December 28th, 2020. Any corrections or additions to any of those? If not, I'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes of December 8th and December 28th.
Good. Thanks, Kate. And
Second.
second from Millie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And
Thank you, Mayor.
Francisco.
As required by code or resolution, we do need you to hold a public hearing for the redevelopment agency's annual budget. We anticipate $1.035 million in the new tax increment, and we estimate, or we've allocated $5.8 approximately $1 million for capital projects. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Francisco. So I'll open this to a public hearing. I'm now going to close the public hearing since Tyson didn't want to say anything. Thanks, Tyson. And I'll close the public hearing. And I will look for a motion to consider adopting the RDA Resolution 2021-01, approving the proposed fiscal year 2022 RDA budget.
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the RDA Resolution 2021-01, approving the proposed fiscal year 2022 RDA budget.
I'll second that.
Thank you both. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Adjournment.
Motion
Do
to
I have a
adjourn.
motion? Thank you.
Second.
Second from Millie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, yeah, I forgot.